Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Levi Gerlitsky, and we are the Chabad on the Big Island of Hawaii. Just to give a little background in case someone is not familiar too much with Hawaii. So we're located in the Pacific Ocean. About the same distance from New York to LA is the same distance from LA to the islands of Hawaii. So it's pretty far of a flight, about 2,500 miles. In Hawaii, there are multiple islands. There were shluchim, Chabad shluchim already came out to Honolulu a little over 30 years ago to permanently establish Chabad here. Prior to that, there were students that always came. I have an uncle of mine that came out here more than 40 years ago in order to volunteer during the summer. But on the main island, which is the island of Oahu, there's Chabad over there. Then there's other islands, the outer islands, as they're called, Maui, Kauai, and the Big Island. We're called the Big Island because we're the largest in size. It's a little over 4,000 square miles, our island. So it's pretty spread out, not a large population here. We have currently a little under 200,000 people spread out throughout the island. The Jewish population here is estimated to be probably about 1,000 people, not families, but that's our estimate, that there's about 1,000 Jews. There's always some that are coming and going. This isn't really a place where we have generations of Jews and people are establishing a community, but it's usually people who come here because they're getting away from something where they want to live very off-grid. We have a lot of options like that over here where someone can live on a piece of land that's not part of any homeowners association or any restrictions. Even with building codes, a lot of these stuff are in the gray area in certain areas here. And then when it comes to water, electricity, they're providing it all themselves, the catchment tank. They run their own electric through generators. Of course, not all areas on the island are like that, but we definitely have some of that. So we moved out to the Big Island about 4 years ago. There was a Chabad already here before. Chabad started permanently on this island about 12 years ago. Rabbi Avremo and Rivki Chazanov started over here. And then we came out while they were still here to try out in order to start it up again because they knew that they were leaving. And then we moved out here permanently a little after we came to try it out. We have Kenai Nahara, 4 children. One of them was already born in New York after we got married. The other 3 were born over here in Hawaii. It's definitely a unique type of shlichus, a unique type of community and mission over here. It's not a typical scenario where you have everything of a community or kosher food or schools. There's no other options over here. Like there's no permanent shul anywhere on the island, not with any congregation, not just with Chabad. We have in our house in the backyard, we built a tent, and that's what we use for a shul, for a community center, where we make our events and meals. But ultimately, it's pretty small and spread out over here. There's no kosher restaurants, no kosher supermarkets. All of our meat, chicken, kosher wine, we have to ship in from the mainland. So it comes by boat. We have to really plan ahead. There's no last minute getting milk from the store because we have to send in our order. It takes them about a week to get it ready. And then it's 2 weeks from when they have the order ready till it actually ends up in our home. So in total, we have to plan 3 weeks ahead of what you need. And then when you get stuck, you just got to figure out how to make things work. So besides for the non-kosher, for no kosher restaurants or supermarkets, of course, you have the basics that you can find here locally, like Walmart, Target, Costco. But our Costco doesn't sell a lot of the stuff that they would sell in Jewish neighborhoods. So they don't have any kosher chicken or cheese, at least not Chalav Yisrael, which is the higher standard that we eat. So there's definitely a lot of that aspect of having large freezers in your garage, planning ahead. And we started also selling to the local community because people that want to keep kosher really struggle with it. So we offer at cost price for locals. They can buy from what we have in stock, or when we make an order, there's also that possibility that they can add on to our order, to our shipment. Once it's already shipping out, they can choose anything that they want to get. We don't have here a school, so our children are homeschooled. We're getting actually this coming year, we're going to have a teacher to help out, but the children get homeschooled. There's no mikvah for women. That's definitely a tough one. The closest mikvah is a flight away in Honolulu. So it's a 45-minute flight each way. Otherwise, there's the Pacific Ocean, which is the largest mikveh in the world. We currently have it available on our island, but of course it's not super convenient because it's a little bit out in the open. There's sand going on. Halachically, there's advantages, of course, with the ocean, but there's problems that could come about with an ocean. So it's definitely complicated and difficult. That's one of the things we're working on, to try to be able to build here a permanent mikvah for women. But we survive currently with what we have. Actually, speaking about the mikvah, we had here a family that's wanted to keep taharat hamishpacha, to keep the laws of family purity. And it was complicated for them to go by nighttime, because when you have a question about a certain problem, if you need a rabbi to answer that's familiar with these laws, we don't have anyone on island that deals with it. So you have to send in the answer by mail. And until you get the answer, could only be sometimes 2 days later. So turns out the night that they had to go to mikvah would have been the day prior to Sukkot. It was a 3-day holiday. It was 2 nights of Sukkot and then followed by a Shabbat. So they missed that time because they didn't get yet an answer. They only got an answer from the rabbi the next day. By that time, to travel to Honolulu, they would be missing the holiday if they would have to be there overnight. So they got a heter, because it was already after the 7th day, to go during the daytime. So they went to Honolulu by day, they went to the mikvah. On their way back, the flight got delayed, then it got canceled. They weren't able to book anything on the next flight. So it was too late. They had a baby at home that was still nursing. They were hoping to get back in time, and to stay there for 3 days with the baby home alone wouldn't work out. So last minute, the husband had to book a private jet in order for them to fly over. It costed them, I was super impressed with their commitment, but to keep the chag, they paid over $3,000 to have her fly in last minute in order to be able to be back home with the family, all for the Mesirut Nefesh of using a mikvah to go make sure that they're keeping the laws of family purity. Levi, do you want me to go on, or do you want to ask questions? What's best for you?
So usually what we do is we hear from you first, and just by the end, we'll leave a few minutes for questions. So if you could tell us, like, where the first Jews came from, at what point, and, how that, you could talk about a little bit of other communities also around Hawaii. It doesn't have to be only your specific place.
Yeah. So the history of Jews in Hawaii definitely is dated back a few hundred years. There were people that ended up here, different Jewish people, during the time when Hawaii was not yet part of the United States. Hawaii used to be a kingdom. It was the Hawaiian kingdom. They would have their own kings, their own set of laws. At the time, there were Jewish people that came. Some of them were advisors to the king. There was one that gave over a Torah to the Hawaiian kingdom. And there was also, this I heard, I haven't seen this, but someone said that at one point they minted a coin here with the Star of David in order to be thankful to some of the Jewish advisors that were coming and helping out the kingdom. But much of that I don't know. Once it became a state, there were definitely Jews that were coming here as merchants, because it's just in between Asia and America. You had lots of Jewish people that were coming and stopping by. There wasn't so much of an established community. So there weren't ancient synagogues from hundreds of years ago, or even famous rabbis that we know of, that at least I know of. But there were definitely Jewish people here. You could go into cemeteries, and there are Jewish grave sites, Jewish burial sites on the island. Definitely once it became a state, and even starting prior to that, once it became a naval base for the United States, there was a great establishment here. So there started to have a place. There's a famous army base in Honolulu. You have Pearl Harbor. So many soldiers have come through it. So they started with having chaplains here, starting having a shul on the base. So there's definitely a lot of that establishment of Jewish people coming through the islands. And as time went on, there became more of an established communities on the other islands, Honolulu, Maui, and the Big Island has as well. Going back, we even have a record I saw from a newspaper clipping that they had probably about 50 years ago, that some rabbis, Chabad rabbis, came through the island, on our island. They made an event and had over 100 people attending. So that's very surprising to us, because there was, even now when we make events, it's rare to get anything around 100 people. So to have it back then, there was some presence, but it's not so much of an established community as much as you would have in other places. This is a transity place. People come, stay for a few years, and then move on. Okay, I guess if you have a question, feel free to interrupt. Otherwise, I'll share. We have actually now interesting story. We don't have a proper Jewish cemetery on the island, which is exclusively Jewish. They don't have one available. So the closest cemeteries are on Kauai. The island of Kauai has an exclusively Jewish cemetery. The Chabad of Kauai runs it over there. So we've had a few scenarios here of people that passed away. And the go-to, of course, over here is cremation. It's the cheapest method. And if someone is not motivated to shell out all that extra money, they don't see the importance, there's definitely a lot of people that unfortunately want to go that route. So many times we have to get involved, speak with the families, try to convince them to do burials. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. We just had now, a little over a week ago, there was a fellow on the island which we knew. We had someone visited him just even a month before he was killed, and we put on tefillin with him. He lived on the other side of the island, and then a few weeks ago he went missing. After a while, someone found him in a park. He was murdered to death, and unfortunately, they still don't know who did it. That's something that the detectives are working on. But the sad part was that the family really cut ties with him, partially because he himself left the family and just went away to Hawaii. He was here for many years. So we were unfamiliar with that whole side of the story. But once the police found out who was the next of kin and they got in touch, the family said that they have no interest in claiming responsibility. And on their part, the Hawaii County should do with it as they see fit. So they already sent in the documents to have it cremated because it was an unclaimed body, and the state disposes of the body in the cheapest way for them, which is of course sad. The way we look at it, we wanted to get a proper Jewish burial. So as soon as we found out, we got involved, and the family had a lot of resentment towards this fellow. I said, I totally understand. We're not here to fix anything from the past, but we asked the family if we can please take on the responsibility to make sure that he gets a burial. They were a little hesitant, but they said, you know what, if you can sign for us a document that we're completely not responsible financially at all, we're willing to allow you to do whatever you see fit, because on our part, we don't care. So thank God we sent them over the letter. We were able to secure the body. It was already, the documents were already sent to the crematorium. So it was really at the last minute, once we found out that this happened, we were able to, thank God, secure the body and be able to send them off island in order to get a proper Jewish burial. And we also, that's also in thanks to Chesed Shalemes, we actually ended up using their service. They were able to give us pro bono service. They have a cemetery in New York specifically for a mes mitzvah, someone that doesn't have any relatives. And we were able to send the body. We had to raise the funds in order to send the body to New York. Once they got to New York, this organization took over and did a proper Jewish burial. We have also on the island a big population of Jewish people that are unaware that they're Jewish, unaware or really don't know anything about it. So that's a big aspect. Unlike in other places where a lot of Jews are looking to come to synagogue, they want to build up a community, people here can sometimes know that they're Jewish, and that's just about it. We had our menorah that we put up every year on the main street in town. A little after our menorah went up, I get a call from this young guy. He reaches out, he says, hi, I saw the menorah up and I know that I'm Jewish, but I don't know anything about it. I would love to learn more. So I said, sure, that's what we're here for. So we started a weekly learning session. This was a young boy. He was still at the time in high school, finishing up high school and looking to go to college. We started learning on a weekly basis. He really was encouraging himself with advancing in his Yiddishkeit, in his observance of Torah mitzvahs. He started putting on a yarmulke and tzitzis. We got a call from his employer because he was working at a high-end restaurant on the island, and they wanted to know what is required regarding wearing a yarmulke according to Jewish law, because they cannot discriminate if it's a religious requirement. However, they don't allow their employees to wear anything because they want to give off this impression that people are not walking around with baseball caps or anything of that sort. So that was a discussion. I was so impressed how committed this kid was. We're going from not knowing anything other than the fact that he's Jewish. We bought a pair of tefillin. He was putting on tefillin every day, started joining us for sleeping over close by for Shabbos and Yom Tov in order to be able to join. He went on a birthright trip in order to go to Israel and explore together with Mayanot, which is a Chabad organization that deals with taking young students to Israel in order to give them a taste of their heritage. And sure enough, he loved it. He even signed up for yeshiva at Mayanot. The unfortunate, sad part was that after a while, when it came to the financial aspects, he wasn't having any support from his family. He was trying to save up money for himself. So he eventually got a little cold feet about paying the whole tuition, even with the discount. So for now, it's on a back burner. So it didn't yet have a perfect ending, but we're still in touch with him. And thank God, that's going well. Those are the types of Yidden, the types of souls that we find here. Sometimes people that could be far away. The Nevi'im, if you go through the prophets, they have a lot of discussions about the Jews will be exiled to the faraway islands, faraway places. From the land of Israel, one of the furthest places are the islands of Hawaii. Our time is 12 or 13 hours different than Israel. So we're just about the other side of the world. I say 12 or 13 because Hawaii is one of the states that don't change their clocks. So we have the same time year round. So depending on when they change their clocks, it's either 12 or 13 hours. So this is really from the furthest places. So possibly when Jews were leaving the land of Israel, being exiled, and they had to be sent far away, who knows? Maybe they ended up in Hawaii. If you're looking to get to the furthest place, this is definitely one of the big options. For many years, it wasn't known to the West about the islands of Hawaii. They was only discovered in the 1700s with Captain Cook. He was a British captain that would go around exploring, and he came across the islands of Hawaii, and that's really where it became known to the rest of the world. But there were people living here for at least from now about 1,000 years. Some locals that were here from other islands that it was familiar to them, but it wasn't something known West. So not just location-wise, but I would say also regarding the people, it tends to attract those that are isolated, far away, not so necessarily requiring a community, requiring a solid foundation for and establishing a Jewish presence in Jewish life. So we deal a lot with those souls. And another factor, of course, is tourists. Tourists is a big industry here. It definitely is one of the main financial aspects of what keeps Hawaii running, which of course during the pandemic was really difficult. Many hotels shut down for the pandemic. Some of them have more serious consequences even afterwards, even when it starts picking up. But tourism is definitely a big industry here. Many people get their livelihood through that. And we have tourists that come through year round. We have also an Ironman over here. This is the main triathlon for all Ironmans, started off on the Big Island in Kona. It still goes on. People win other triathlons, other Ironmans in other places of the world in order to join the main one over here on the island. So there's definitely a lot of people that come for that one. They have the full Ironman. They have also a half Ironman also on the island. So tourists come year round, and there's a lot that reach out. Some of them are more religious, wanting to have Shabbat services, kosher food, holiday experiences, whether it's Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. They want to join us for davening, for learning, for having meals, delivered meals to their hotel, or if they need services with koshering, their kitchen, if they're renting a home. So we have a lot of those types of requests from tourists, but most of our time is spent with the local community, whether it's reaching out to finding new Jews. Some of the Jews can live over 3-hour drive away from where we are. There's no one central location on the island. There's 2 main towns on both sides of the island, about 2 hours apart from each other, Kona and Hilo. But then there's a lot of smaller places all around the island. And then a lot of people are living off-road. So you have to drive on private roads or unpaved roads. Some of them are inaccessible if you don't have a 4-wheel drive. So a lot of these people are difficult to get to. Some of the people live in areas where there's no service. There's no cell phone service, or it could be really spotty. So you have a lot of that. And that's most of our focus, is dealing with the local community, having available each Shabbat. We have every week Shabbat services followed by a meal, because people don't have so much family here. So the community becomes the family. So everybody that joins us for davening stays for the meal, and we have a meal together every week. It's really nice that we always get visitors that join us. Some weeks we'll have more, some weeks less, but our average Shabbat meals are usually about 25 people on Friday night. Of course, it depends on the week. It could be higher or lower, mostly locals. And then there's tourists that come through. Sometimes we'll have 2, sometimes we could have 15 tourists. And then Shabbat day is a little smaller. We get people that join, but of course, during the daytime, it's more difficult for people to come, especially if they have other plans. So we have then, not every week do we get a minyan, do we have Torah reading, but we get once in a while. And then the holidays, of course, are busier. More people are coming then, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Pesach, Hanukkah. We get more of a crowd then. I would say that living in Hawaii really changed a lot of our outlook that we should have for myself on Jewish people. I grew up in Brooklyn, in New York, where everybody's religious, or at least in our community. And it comes a certain expectation of what you assume someone that's Jewish should be doing, or how they should act, how they should dress. And especially growing up as a young boy in yeshiva, there's a little bit of always trying to do well. There's a little bit of the competition aspect. You want to get the highest score and you want to win the greatest reward. And it's always looking at who's doing the best, who's doing the most accomplishments, who's achieving the highest goals. Coming to Hawaii, and you get Jews from all shapes and sizes, all different walks of life, all different experiences of how much they know, how much they're interested. And one can sometimes find it difficult where they're trying to say, well, why is this one doing this or that? But living in Hawaii really teaches me about looking at every Jew and trying to see him the way God does. God, in his eyes, every single Jew is the same. They all have a common denominator, that they're a part of God. They're a child of God. And just like parents, healthy parents will love every child the same. Maybe one is really successful financially and another one has struggles in certain areas, but there's an inherent love that's equal for all children, regardless of how they behave. Something that we definitely can experience in Hawaii, of looking at every Jew and say, as much as God loves me, and as much as he loves this and that person for what they do, he loves each and every Jew just the same. And we might not see their greatness, and we might say, well, what is there to love? But that's just our problem. That's not that there's really a problem with him. That's just a problem with how we are experiencing or looking at another person. And if we find ourselves having that issue, it's something to look in ourselves and say, well, clearly I'm not on the right path. I'm not looking at them the way I should be. The way God loves them, that's ultimately the best way to reach out to them, to show them and give them a feeling that ultimately, regardless of their knowledge, background, or their level of observance, everybody's welcome. Sometimes we have people that are embarrassed to come, and I don't know where they get sometimes their ideas from, but because they have a tattoo, they'll say, therefore, I don't want to come to synagogue. Or they had negative experiences. I just met a guy yesterday. We put up a mezuzah by him. He said, I don't like coming to synagogue because when I was younger, I once went to a synagogue on Yom Kippur, and there was so much talk of auctioning off of the aliyot and the different parts of the synagogue services that are opening and closing, holding the Torah. He said it felt like this was a business transaction, and he said that turned him off from synagogue. And I could totally understand where he's coming from. Synagogues have so diverse type of congregation, it's really difficult to appease everyone. Some people love it that there's these auctions going on, and some people hate it. And it's nice when communities have multiple synagogues available because it gives people the opportunity to choose which type of synagogue clicks most with them. But you can never satisfy everyone. We have that when we serve our food. There's always someone that complains that the food is too this or too that. Either it's too salty or not enough salt. It's too healthy or not enough taste involved. You have it with, unfortunately, when it comes to politics, we have, sadly, disputes that happen in the synagogue. One guy comes with a Trump hat. This is already while Trump was still around. And another guy says he won't step foot in a synagogue that has someone wearing a Trump hat. Another guy says, this is religious freedom. I could come with any yarmulke and any hat that I want. So it's difficult to appease everyone. It's difficult to make everyone happy. But we're trying to make a place where everybody can feel at home, everyone can feel comfortable. And people should feel the right to share if they want something different. If they want, it's a small enough community where someone can voice if they want something changed or they think this would work better, that would work better. We're definitely trying to make it feel like a small knit family. And there's a fellow that comes to us. He's been here already for 30 years, doesn't have any family here, never had any children. And every week he shares by the Shabbat meal how he loves Kona, the Big Island. This guy's been around the world. He lived in Japan and Hong Kong, San Francisco, London, and he's toured around the world. He said he loves the Big Island. He loves Kona. And one of the best things now that he loves about the Big Island and Kona is Chabad, because since the previous shluchim were here 12 years ago, he's been coming every week. And this is his family. This is where he feels at home. This is where he feels comfortable. So that's a lot of what we can offer here, to share a sense of family, of closeness, a place where people aren't judged, regardless of how much they know. And it's sad, I think, that people are embarrassed. So many times we get calls of people that say, can I come to synagogue? I don't read Hebrew. I've never been to a synagogue before. And we say that's exactly what we're here for. We're here for people that have never experienced it before. We want to give you a first great experience. I'll share a story, actually. There was a little bit of an insight for me. We had, before last year, Yom Kippur, there was a woman that reached out, and we've dealt with her before. She works for a very, very wealthy man, a guy that's extremely wealthy. He has a home here in the Four Seasons. It's a wealthy neighborhood or a small community. And she told us that she works part of a team. There's like 5 people that work on the home. There's a chef, there's a sous chef, there's a manager for the property, and she's coordinating the buying and selling aspect. So we clearly knew that this was a wealthy man. However, we didn't know his name or what he looks like. She reached out that they wanted some challah for the holiday, and there's no challah sold locally. We make it and we have it for the local community. So we sold her some challah, and I told her, we're happy if you can please invite your boss, a Jewish guy. Clearly he's interested in challah. We'd love to have him join us for services. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. I sent her the invitation. She said, sure, I'll pass it on. Maybe he'll join. Now, I don't know how this guy looks. And every year, there's always people that are joining that I don't know how they look, because there's tourists reaching out. There's people that tell their friends about it. So some people, of course, are the regulars, but you always have on high holidays people that you don't know. As people were coming into the synagogue, I said, wait, if this guy comes, I definitely want to make sure he has a great experience. Of course, he could help our synagogue. Maybe he'll even want to build a permanent synagogue for us. So I'm having these big dreams, these big thoughts, but I said, I don't know how the guy looks. So each person that comes in, I tell myself, well, maybe this is him. Maybe it's him. I have to treat him with the utmost respect and make sure he has a great experience, and hopefully he'll keep coming back. And then a thought occurred to me, and I said, one moment. Why is it that only for this guy I have to give him a great experience? In God's eyes, everyone is the same. Every Jew is precious. And money doesn't come from anyone. No donor is the one that gives you the money. It's God that gives you the money. God is ultimately the one that decides how much money we'll get. And one way or another, it will come about. We don't know how our money comes to us. So I said, I got to treat everyone the same because they really are the same. Everyone is extremely unique, extremely special, and they're all a soul that should be treated as if they are the billionaire, the supporter of the Chabad house, the supporter of the synagogue. We should be treating each person that, giving them that sense of warmth, feeling of being welcome. We actually had, just to show how we don't know where our success comes from, we had here a fellow, he lives on the other side of the island. And at one point he reaches out to me. He said, I'm flying out of Kona, my side of the island, about a 2-hour drive. He wants to know if he gets a ride to Kona, if I can give him a ride to the airport. If he ends up in Kona, could I give him a ride to the airport? So I said, what time is it that you have a flight? I figured if he reached out, he probably clearly doesn't have a lot of funds. He's probably struggling financially. So the time that he wanted me to drive was either way a time I would watch my children in the morning. So I said, sure, I'll put the kids in the car. We'll go to the airport. Not a big deal. He calls me up the night before and he says, oh, I'm already in town. I don't have a place where to stay tonight. Is it okay if I come and stay over by you? He said, if not, don't worry, I'll sleep in my car. I didn't realize when he originally spoke to me that he has a vehicle and he just wanted to park the car by us in order to avoid paying for the parking at the airport. He was going to be gone for a little while. He wanted to park the car by us and then have me drive him to the airport and then pick him up when he comes back. So I said, surely this guy is struggling financially. So I said, sure. It was after a busy Shabbat. This was a Sunday. So it was after busy Shabbat. We had guests staying over. I spoke with my wife quickly. We said, just give us a few minutes. We'll set up the room. He came over a little while later. We gave him some dinner. And at that time, we got notice from our landlord that we had to leave our home because they didn't like it that we were running services out of the home. We were having guests coming over. So the landlord tells us that we have 2 months to get out. He said nothing against Judaism. He said if you were any other religion as well, I wouldn't want that going on in my home. It's extra wear and tear. It's disturbing the neighbors. So I understood. I said, no problem. At the time, we were looking for another place, but it's really difficult because we have to be in a certain area close enough to hotels for people to walk. We had to have a home with a certain amount of bedrooms, plus a large room that we could use for Shabbat services. And we had to be, of course, within our price range. We don't have unlimited funds. We were struggling to even, when we came here, everybody, first thing they ask you is for tax returns and proof of income. And running a Chabad house, we're not exactly up that alley. I wasn't working beforehand. I was in Kaila learning. So it was definitely tricky for us to find the right place for the right price that would still approve us. And many people, just the fact that you have children already don't approve you. They cannot officially discriminate against it. But part of the application, they want to know how many people are living in the home and their ages. And then they could conveniently choose someone else that's not going to do as much wear and tear on the home. So understandably, we were struggling to find a place. We wanted to buy because we saw how difficult it was getting a place here to rent. Even when we moved here, we were trying to get a place before we moved out. It was too difficult because the market for rentals is really limited because a lot of people do Airbnb, short-term rentals. They make more money. So long-term rentals was difficult to find. Whenever we called up a place to apply, they said, well, if you're not here in person, we have so many applications coming in person, we're not going to deal with someone from out of state. They said many times people book it, they reserve it, and then when they come, they say, oh, I didn't realize this, I didn't realize that, and they back out. They said it's not worth it for us. We have enough business just from locals. So we had to move out here, and it took us about a month. We did like a Airbnb rental, constantly extending it till we found finally a place to move into. So we knew how difficult it was, besides for the moving aspect of packing up all our svarim and everything and letting people know that the address changed. So it's really difficult. We didn't want to have to be subject again to being kicked out by a landlord because of running services. And the previous Chabad rabbi had the same issue. During his years here, he's been to as many homes as the years he's been here. So we really wanted to avoid that. So we tried looking into what would it be to purchase something. So we spoke to local bankers. They said there's nothing to talk about if you don't have 2 years of tax returns. We found a Jewish banker in New York. He said, I can help you out if possibly, if you could give me 20% down. The problem was we didn't have 20% down of the purchasing of a home. So we started looking at homes for rent and homes to purchase, hoping for some type of miracle, praying to God to help us out. That day, after this fellow joined us for dinner, he was going to sleep over. So I was speaking to my wife about my day's findings of what we were able to come up with and different responses we got from each person. So this fellow hears us and he says, oh, are you guys moving? So we said, well, we have to leave here. We're trying to find a new place. He said, are you looking to buy or rent? I said, we would love to buy, but unfortunately we don't have the money, but we're hoping for some miracle. So he says, well, maybe I can help you out. So I think to myself, if you don't have money for a taxi, you don't want to pay for parking at the airport or hotel, $18 that you're going to give us won't make it or break it. We can't buy a home with $18. We actually had here, a guy, when we were trying to buy, he said, I think everybody in the community could help out and we'll be able to purchase a home. He said, for example, I have a few buckets of paint that I have left over from previous jobs that we did. I could donate that to Chabad and other people as well could donate. So I was thinking, okay, this is another fellow that's a little bit imagining things and not exactly involved with the practical world. I can't pay my mortgage or get a loan with buckets of paint. So I told the guy straight up, I said, how much are you referring to when you say you could help us out? So he said, how much do you need? So unfortunately, I was still not advanced enough to say the full amount. I felt like I didn't want to overburden him with too much. At the time, we needed at least 100,000 for a down payment. It all depends on which home we end up buying. So I told him, I said, we need 100,000. However, if I could get started with just 50,000, I believe we could pull together another 50,000 from family, friends, loans. We could figure it out how to put together some additional funds. So he said, okay, no problem. I could give you an interest-free loan for $50,000. And then, yeah, that would be my pleasure to help out. So I was shocked. I wasn't sure if he was serious. And I said, but just making clear, I won't be able to pay back your loan within a year or two. It's going to take time. Of course, we're going to have a lot of expenses and other people that we need to pay back. It wouldn't work if I have a large debt to pay back besides for the mortgage. He said, yeah, no problem. I don't need the money. As long as you pay me back, I'm happy to work with you whenever it's available. So I wasn't sure if I should believe him or not. But sure enough, a few days later, he showed up. He brought us the money. And it actually wasn't a few days later because he was leaving town. When he came back, he gave us the money. And it was shocking to me. It was, in my eyes, a great miracle that we had the mitzvah of achnasas archim. You invited some guests, and Hashem helped us. We had this miraculous where he was able to give us the money. And sure enough, we were able to purchase a home, which we're so thankful, besides for the fact that now we don't have to bounce around and be worried about landlords kicking you out because of running services. Now with the pandemic, prices really shot up like crazy in Hawaii. Things really went high because a lot of people decided that if they could work remotely, they might as well live in Hawaii instead of in cities where it's really expensive and a lot of traffic and there's not a lot of beauty there. So prices went up high and rentals became really, really scarce. It's really hard to find. We have a problem now with too much request, too much demand, and too little supply. So if we would have been stuck without it, it would have definitely been difficult. There's a guy just yesterday, I drove a guy to the airport because he had a rental that finished and the landlord is coming back and he doesn't have a new rental yet. He wasn't able to find something that would be reasonable for him within the price range and within what he needs. So he's leaving the island till he has something coming up in a month from now that will be available. So just for that month, he has to leave. So Baruch Hashem, we're able to purchase a home and have a permanent address. We run the Chabad out of our home because it's a small enough community. We eventually, with COVID starting, we moved from the indoors to outdoors. So we do our services out there. And yeah, Baruch Hashem, it's developing, it's growing. We're seeing the fruit of our labor.
Okay, thank you so much. Wow, fascinating. And those powerful lessons that you learned from Hawaii, I think we're all moving down there just to get that appreciation of a fellow Jew. Let me ask a question or two before we open the floor for anybody else. Maybe you could tell us, how do you meet new Jews? If they're so spread out and so few, how do you meet new Jews?
Yeah. So the best way actually I found is word of mouth. People that we meet that have a great experience, when it comes up with them a conversation of a friend or a relative, people reach out and they say, oh, I'm looking for a menorah. My friend mentioned that you're here. I would love to get a menorah. Or my cousin is coming to visit and he only needs kosher food. And someone mentioned that you have kosher food. So word of mouth is definitely the way things spread a lot on this island. In general, word of mouth works well for contractors or people that need any help when you're looking for a realtor. It's usually you ask your friends and neighbors. But also, we found a lot of success with walking around as a Jew. Some places people are scared to walk around with a yarmulke or tzitzis whenever there's some type of anti-Semitic attack. And I think that's in a way giving in to what they want. They want to place fear in people in order for them to be scared to be who they are. But I found walking around as a Jew in the store, we always get people that stop us and say, oh, shalom. Sometimes they're Jewish, sometimes they're not. They just see us and they're like, oh, I used to live in New York and I'm surprised to see someone like you over here. Or other things like that. But definitely walking around with a yarmulke, tzitzis, gets attention. And then there you have the traditional methods of online. People reach out. And we bring out also every year, multiple times, yeshiva students. And they go around the island looking for Jews. They spend the time just going to businesses, meeting one Jew. And whenever you meet a Jew in a far remote place, you say, hey, do you have any Jewish neighbors? Do you know anyone? So they give them a lot of those leads. We had now in the summer, we brought out a couple. This guy actually visited us as a bacher before he was married. He visited us for a month with a friend and he loved it so much. He really connected well with a lot of people. He's been in touch with them by email and over the phone. He's been sending them different things for the holidays. So he came out now again with his wife. He was here for about a month and a half, going around the island, making Shabbos also on the other side, because we're located on our side and with children, it's really difficult. During Yom Tov, we always have somewhat like Hanukkah. We go and make a party on the other side of the island. And Purim, Pesach, we have students that come out and make Seder there or Purim party. But at the same time, to have a regular Shabbos meal, that's something that's great when we have a couple that could come here and do that on the other side. So he definitely helps out a lot with finding one Jew leading to the next.
Thank you. Very interesting. And one more question. You said that Hawaii is a place that people tend to run away from the rest of the world by going there. Does that make it very difficult for you to connect to them because there are people that are running away, so-called, or makes it easier because they're running away from a different type of society, and when you welcome them with warmth and love, they are more than happy to join you?
Yeah, so actually, that's one of the beauties of Hawaii. People here are very nice. People that come here are the ones that have a lot of patience, have a lot of time, are really interested in being kind to others. It's not anything like New York or big cities where you have a rat race for money. This is not, people here don't dress to impress, they don't drive to impress. It's very much of a authentic type of life. People here like being real, they like being friendly. So even those that are running away from something in the past, either from a bad marriage or bad childhood or a bad relationship, or they just want to get away from family politics, they're friendly with those that are here. We definitely find, like, I've yet to have any negative experiences where in New York, I would go around visiting Jewish businesses and the people that slam the door in your face, are the ones that are Jewish. The ones that are very welcoming, unfortunately, were always the ones that didn't know anything about Judaism and wanted to hear. But over here in Hawaii, definitely we find people are very warm. I won't say that as soon as they find out that there's a Jewish community and their services, they're loving it and they come every week. A lot of them are really warm when you come to them, and they're happy to hear when they need something, if they need a mezuzah or some help with having a prayer book or a prayer being said for a relative that's sick. They're happy to reach out and really warm, but not that as soon as they know there's a synagogue, they're coming every week. So they're warm, friendly, but at the same time, not specifically looking to change their lifestyle and become all of a sudden a part of a community.
Okay, thank you. Would you happen to have any pictures of easily available?
Yeah, I could, let me see here.
I made you co-host, so you could share.
Okay, so let me see quickly if I can share that. So I put together here just a small slide. See if it comes up well. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, very clearly.
Yeah, so this is, yeah, okay, so this is our local, some of the local people. This is actually in our first home. Here's our Renaira outdoors with the beautiful view. Actually, one of the great things about Hawaii, unlike Chicago, we feel your pain during the winter, is that our weather here year round is pretty much the same. The difference between night and day, anytime or during winter season or summer season, is greater than the difference between day and day of winter and summer. So we're roughly always in between the high 70s to the low 90s year round. I actually just saw now that Kona, our town, is the one that has, here's our Hanukkah party. And this is another event making for the local community. Here we have actually a Pidyon Haben. We flew in a Kohen because you have to have a Kohen. We have actually one on the island, but unfortunately he was married to a non-Jew, which puts the status of a Kohen in jeopardy. But this is a Kohen that we flew in order to do a Pidyon Haben. We have to do the same for a Mohel. And when we want to do a Brit Milah, there's none on the island. This is a bar mitzvah for a boy that we did. He lives on island. They're a family of 3. So we learned with them about his bar mitzvah. This is a wedding we did for a family that flew in. They were from out of town. So we officiated at the wedding. Here's some of in the Veterans Cemetery, some Jewish grave sites we went to visit on Veterans Day, some local people. Here we have, this is actually a woman from New York. She came to visit our community, and we did not have a Torah in our community. We borrowed one from Chabad of Honolulu when we came here. A little after we came, probably a year after we came, someone broke into Chabad of Honolulu and stole their Torahs that they had in their ark. At the time, they had 2 in the ark. One they loaned to us. So luckily, because they loaned the Torah to us, only 2 were stolen and not 3. Till today, they haven't found who stole it. So they needed their Torah back right away. We were stuck without a Torah. So this woman was there. She heard we don't have a Torah. I did not know her before. I actually wasn't even sure if she was serious, but she said, if you don't have a Torah, I'm sponsoring a Torah. Sure enough, she went to New York. She reached out to a Chabad Shliach she knew there, and they donated a Torah to us. So that was beautiful. This is actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Mokoleli Airlines. He's the head pilot for Mokoleli Airlines, a Jewish guy. Here's our Torah celebration that we had. The lighting's not the best. Here's one of our Passover Seder that we did indoors before COVID. This is a fellow from Jerusalem. He visited the island. He forgot his tefillin. He reached out from us. And sure enough, we met up, put on tefillin. This is a woman, a tara that we had to do. There was a woman that passed away on the island, and they were going to do cremation. We've reached out to the family, and the quickest way to get her over to the other island, there was delays with the mortuary being able to process her. We had a local guy here that had a plane. He said, I'll fly her over to the other island. This way you avoid a lot of the delays with having the mortuary pick up, schedule a flight, put them on the plane. They have to switch planes actually in Honolulu because it wasn't a direct from Hilo to Kauai, the other island. So this guy said I could do it, but he didn't have a place to do a Tara. So we flew in. This is Pearl Krasniansky, the head shlucha for Hawaii from Honolulu. And together, everybody did a Tara in a hangar at the airport. We didn't have a place to do it, but this guy was really kind. He said, I'll give you access to the hangar. So you could see that plane in the background. We did a Tara over there. Here we have these is actually from the local Israelis. We have Israelis here, like everywhere. A lot of them do like the skincare, a women's group event. This is preparing our donuts for Hanukkah. We have events on the Kona side and the Hilo side, and menorah lighting. So we had that. This is actually, oh, yeah, this is a group of tourists that came. So that we have also, they want sometimes minyanim. So we bring the Torah to them. We put together a bunch of tourists. They reach out during the seasons that everybody comes here. So each group is 3-4 people. They say, do you have a minyan? So together we put it together. This is one of the burials that we did on Kauai. The rabbi wasn't there at the time, so I had to fly over to the island of Kauai. And we did over there the burial. This is during the quarantining. We were giving out chicken soup. This is actually an interesting fellow. He's 74 years old. He never put on tefillin. He completely grew up secular. He said his parents not once took him to a synagogue. His grandparents were not even involved with Judaism, but he said he knew absolutely nothing other than the fact that he was Jewish. He reached out to us during the pandemic, and I started learning with him on a weekly basis. He was really advancing fast. I said, it's time we put on tefillin and do a bar mitzvah. So we ordered him his own pair. He paid for it. If you notice over here, you have me in the Zoom, because it was during the start of the pandemic. It was really serious. And he was an older fellow. There was a lockdown over here in Hawaii. There was no traveling. So we shipped it, we had it shipped to his home. And then I put on tefillin, teaching him over Zoom how to put on tefillin. This is the first time he put on tefillin in his life. We did a bar mitzvah, and this guy really took it on full on. He comes out every week for services. He started learning Hebrew. By now he can read. He's still slow, but he reads Hebrew. I still learn with him every week. He actually planned on going to Israel for a few weeks to advance his studies of Yiddishkeit, but unfortunately with the pandemic, things got a little delayed.
So, Rabbi Lieberthal, I have a question before we run out of time here.
Hold on a minute, let him finish.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, so this is some sukkahs that we put up on other places on the island. So we put up a sukkah for this family. This is a fellow during the pandemic again. We weren't able to visit him. He actually passed away in the hospital. Unfortunately, this is one of the families that we weren't successful with convincing them out of cremation, but I had to visit him through a glass window outside. That was the only way that we could do it. So yeah, some of these. Oh. This is Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. He's known as America's rabbi. So he came to the Big Island. We had him speak for our local community. This is a boy that actually just this summer, he just came back from Camp Lamanachai, a Jewish camp. He grew up over here on the island. We started with him a few years before his bar mitzvah. He learned completely how to read Hebrew. He reads Hebrew fluently now. I still learn with him on a weekly basis, twice a week. He bought a pair of tefillin, put on tefillin, and this summer he went to Camp Lamanachai. He won awards for being from the best kids in camp, a really well-behaved kid, very mature kid. And yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, I think that's it for the photos over here.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. Very, very fascinating, and especially to see it in pictures. It definitely helps a lot. We're going to open the floor for questions now. Whoever wants to ask a question, please go ahead. Noach, you're welcome to go ahead.
Yes, hi, my name's Noach, and I found your presentation very interesting. I've been very involved professionally with researching connections between Native Americans and Jews in North America. And last week, our class visited North Dakota, and I found out that through the shluchim there, that the wife of the tribal chief of the largest tribe in North Dakota, she was Jewish, and their kids are Jewish. And I was very fascinated to hear about the Torah that was given to either the king or queen of Hawaii. That story that you mentioned, 100 years ago or whatever. And I was wondering if you could possibly send anything or any references on that to Reb Lieberthal, because I'm really fascinated with that's a very powerful historic connection. And I just would like to see something and learn a little bit more about that, that historic moment.
Yeah, sure. I'll put on the chat over here. If I can do that, I could put on my email address. So if you email me, I could respond to you directly if you want.
Well, I don't right now. I don't have email, but if you could just use Reb Lieberthal's email, he'll know it's for.
Sure, I'll send it to him and he'll forward it over to you.
Oh, that's so awesome! Thank you very much for all this information.
Does anybody else have a question?
Yeah. One more question here.
No, maybe let's give a turn to somebody else. We'll come back to you.
I was wondering if you have a racetrack in Hawaii or gambling casino in any parts of Hawaii.
So actually, none that I'm familiar with. I've never heard of a racetrack here. And gambling casinos, I know they were considering it at one point, but I believe it's still outlawed. This is actually a state which doesn't even allow raffles. There's no lotteries, and not even a raffle is allowed. So in theory, if we wanted to auction off something, it's problematic. There's ways around it, but this is from the only states, I think there's like 2 or 3 states that have it outlawed. So there's no like public Powerball here or any type of
Okay.
Hawaiian lottery.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have a question? Okay,
Yeah,
Noah, you want to go ahead with your second question?
I came in late to do something else, but it was so fascinating that I ended up watching. Could you give us your name and contact information? Because I didn't catch that.
Yeah, my name is Levi Gerlitsky. That's Levigerlit,
Right.
VKY.
One second. Is there anything to write on?
Yeah, and if you search Chabad of the Big Island,
Yeah,
it will come up.
come up.
Chabad
Okay,
of
good.
the Chabad of the Big Island, Hawaii will come
All
up
right,
directly. Our website, our phone number. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, I think we're going to wrap up over here. Thank you so much, Rabbi Levi. It's been a pleasure to have you today, and I'm sure everybody was fascinated and learned so much. And again, it wasn't just information and history, but you gave us such powerful lessons. Yes, that you have to move down to Hawaii to learn, and those fascinating miracle stories that you shared. I'm sure many more people would want to watch this later on our recordings because of how fascinating it was. We want to wish you and everyone else a ksiva v'chasim v'toiva, l'shana teva m'sukkah, a very, very happy, sweet new year.
Amen, amen. Thank you.
And again,
Thank
anybody that
you.
would like to visit Rabbi Gerlitsky on your next vacation, so he's the rabbi of the Big Islands. You could search it on Chabad Big Islands or Jewish Hawaii, also or something Jewish.
JewishBigIsland.org.
Jewish Big Islands, and you could learn more information and be in contact with him. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All the best.
Thank you.